We're only weeks away from a pivotal NBA draft for the New York Knicks, and I'm joined by the two Long Island legends. Pleasure to have you, EJ, Mark Berman. How are we doing?
Doing great. Yeah, just a couple of weeks away, and we'll find out what Leon Rose has hatched.
Yep,
Good,
absolutely, EJ. Good to see you.
good to see you, buddy. Long time. Great to be back. Great to see you, Mark. Great to talk to you again, CT. Excited to talk about what the plans are for this draft. It's going to be a very interesting draft to tell the direction of the organization and the franchise. So, yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yep, absolutely. And salute to everyone out there watching and join the conversation in the chat. Hit the thumbs up. Mark, it's great to see you. We're getting closer and closer to this draft. There's been some workouts, there's been more and more buzz. Are we getting closer to knowing what the New York Knicks plans are on draft night? And how have you been, seeing these, workouts that they've been bringing, in players in the 11th range?
Yeah, listen, there's still a lot more research to do, but one development for the media was we were invited to the workouts for the first time since 2018. It was a movement by the new Knicks PR person to try to be more transparent. So, I was at the combine and I spoke to some of these guys already, but it was great to talk to someone like Dyson Daniels, Malachi Branham. Uh, we had a couple of second round picks, Tyson Etienne. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Uh, but it was a thrill, and you really get a sense that the Knicks like Dyson Daniels, and Dyson talked about how the Knicks would really like him to play point guard, and he feels he can do it, and he's a very good defender, and talked about how he would fit in great with Tom Thibodeau.
Yep.
Were there any other major standouts for the organization? Were there any other players they seem to be really interested in or doing any more research on? And I guess the other part of my question is, were there any thoughts perhaps of moving up or moving back with
Well,
the draft?
everything's on the table. Uh, we wrote that the Knicks in Chicago interviewed Jaden Ivey, who's probably not falling past 5, maybe 6 at worst. So, he's a CAA guy, so they got into the interview room with him. They wasted one of their slots to interview a guy who's, frankly, out of their range at 11. So that was the indication they're willing to move up, and they have interviewed people behind them. Listen, it hasn't been posted yet, but spoke to Larry Brown, the Memphis assistant coach, about Jalen Duren, 6'11" defensive center. I know the Knicks have a lot of defensive centers, but who knows if Mitchell's re-signing. Noel is an injury question mark. Jericho Sims is the 58th pick in the draft. I mean, I don't know how much better he gets, but the thing with Daniels is the issue, is he going to fall to 11? When we were in Chicago, he was right there. That was 11 was their range, and now he's been working out, he told us, with several teams ahead of the Knicks.
Yeah, yeah. Teams do favor a two-way guy that can fit in multiple positions. I guess the more versatile you are, the more teams could find a position for you to play. That's very, very interesting. Me personally, I feel the New York Knicks fans would be more upset if the Knicks drafted a big man. I do feel like the New York Knicks do need that wing help for RJ Barrett, a defensive wing help. I like Dyson, but Mark do you think Jaden Ivey or Benedict Mathurin would be the Knicks' number one dream home run?
Yeah, Ivy would be the dream. Spoke to someone today. They really doubted that Mathurin is falling to 11 also. One player that, we spoke to in Tarrytown also was Ty Washington. A lot of buzz about Ty because of his Kentucky background. But I feel like if Calipari isn't banging the drum on Ty, the Knicks are going to pass. He did not have a very good finish to the season coming off the ankle injury. I don't know how much basketball college basketball you guys watch, but did you? I've seen highlights of Ty, and has a high basketball IQ, and he's a nice passer, but he lost his explosion after the ankle injury. So, hopefully it's because of that. But I feel Ty is a trade down situation. Trade down to 14, grab another pick, take Ty.
That brings me to another question, Mark. I wonder to what extent Emmanuel Quickley's the end of his season is influencing kind of the draft positioning, the draft board, thinking about the point guard situation. Have you heard anything about Emmanuel Quickley's position? Is he moving into the number one spot? Would he be competing for the number one spot? Or is he just considered a number two and, perhaps in some way, shape, or form, if we're not getting a Jaden Ivey with a move up, it's thinking about perhaps getting a point guard?
Yeah, without a doubt, a combo guard is their number one priority, which is why, Jalen Duren is, listen, I spoke to Larry. So Larry says, listen, they need a point guard. They need a combo guard. But you also at 11 have to take the best available player. So if you think Jalen is like significantly better than the 11th guy who's a guard type, then take Jalen at 11. I mean, he could turn into a Bam Adebayo. That's Larry's comparison. So, yeah, I mean, Quickley had a great finish, but he did not have a good first half. He was going through a sophomore jinx. Again, I probably mentioned on the show, his camp was grumbling a little bit about his erratic playing time, but he really showed so much. I know we nitpicked, did it matter? It was the final weeks of the season, but there's growth. But is he a starting point guard on a really good team? Maybe he's a starting point guard on the 10th seed, but I mean, EJ, is this a guy you want to move forward with? I mean, I feel Knicks fans want to see an upgrade.
I do know that. I mean, the Knicks have been looking for a point guard as long as the Jets have been looking for a quarterback. And I do know that we as fans want a point guard desperately. I think the problem is the how. If we try to trade for a point guard, it's going to cost too much. And I think many of us are still reeling from the Carmelo Anthony trade from 2010, 2011. And all the pieces that were given up. Now, mind you, none of these pieces became superstars, but the idea of gutting your team for, let's say, a Dame Lillard, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, it's very difficult to trade your way to a solid number one point guard, which means at this point, it seems as if we have to draft a point guard or cultivate a point guard. I do know that there are many fans who are really big on, Emmanuel Quickley and hoping that maybe he might develop into one. And I think that's the concerning thing, is that we're not sure what he is. Some of these number one point guards, you're pretty sure they're going to turn into a number one point guard. It's just that they have to develop certain aspects of their game. Emmanuel Quickley, I'm sure when we read the comments, you're going to see the fans are going to be divided. Is he a number one? Is he a number two? What is he? And so I think that's the issue. We have to find some way to get it. I'm not a fan of trading for a point guard because it just costs too much, especially in today's league. But are we in the draft position to draft a number one point guard? I don't think that either we're in the position or that there's a number one point guard that's really yelling out in this particular draft. So
yeah, well, you hit it on the head. This is not a great draft for point guards, and that's very unlucky for the Knicks. This is a wing draft, and the Knicks have wings. But, yeah, listen, the Knicks definitely don't want to give up the farm to trade up. I spoke to someone ahead of the Knicks in the draft. I said, what do you think the chances are of the Knicks putting together a package? They said it's going to cost a lot. I don't think the Knicks are willing to give as much as it's going to take.
Yep. Yeah, definitely is a wing draft. I'm on board with taking the wing. And Mark, is there any more word on future workouts? Johnny Davis is a guy getting a lot of mention in the 11th range. Tom Thibodeau kind of guy. AJ Griffin as well. We know there's some ties there to between Tom and Adrian's father as well.
Yeah, so next week they're going to have 3 workouts. What the Knicks do is they let us know what days we're invited, and it's not until the day before when they release the names. And when they release the names, they tell us, please don't tweet it until you get to the facility. So we've been honoring them. But they said there's a big name, 2 big names coming next week. I believe Johnny Davis is likely one of them, and I think Jeremy Sochan is the other. They did not interview Jeremy, the Baylor 6'8", do everything wing. He's not a great shooter, but he's a great defender. They did not interview him in Chicago, which surprised me. But I think Davis and Jeremy will be in town next week and available to the media. But nothing on Jaden right now. I don't, Jaden, listen, the Knicks are 11, and like, unless they present, and CAA knows exactly what's going on, and unless they present like a situation where we think we can move up, I don't think Jaden would fly all the way to New York. And maybe before the draft, the draft's in Brooklyn, and sometimes the day before the draft or 2 days before the draft, they get people in. They worked out Darius Garland the day before the draft, and Rich Paul was really pushing Knicks brass to draft him. He said he's going to be better than Barrett. And you can't fault the Knicks for taking Barrett, but Darius Garland at point guard is an all-star, and he proved right now to be a little better than RJ Barrett.
Yeah, with Ivey, there are teams that could have him number 1 on their big board as well. So he's going to go in the top 5. There's no doubt. I don't see him.
Well,
slipping.
Houston, I think 3 would be his best spot. Houston is supposedly interested, but if he went 1, I mean, this is a guards league. I mean, like talking to Larry yesterday, he's like, you just can't have enough guards in this new NBA. It's like when I coached, you wanted that center Jalen Duren, but like nowadays in 2022, you just want guards who could defend multiple positions, as the Boston Celtics have proven. Miami proved it, and Golden State is also a small ball team.
Yeah, and wings, multi-positional defenders, Jeremy Sochan and Tari Eason is another name to look out for as well. I hope the New York Knicks do consider those 2 defensive wings, because I feel like it's going to unlock RJ Barrett. He was tasked to defend the best wing on the opposing team every night. But if there's somebody else that can lock in and take those guys, I think RJ Barrett will have a bigger offensive year and maybe more efficient. Hopefully.
Well, and I want you guys to comment on this. I don't think I'm writing it, but someone did tell me, listen, Evan Fournier set the record for 3-point shots, single season record for the Knicks, but that's really all he did. And listen, we wrote it already that at the trade deadline, they were looking to move him. And this summer, they realized defensively he is not the player who's going to be the lockdown defender on the other team's best player. That was Reggie Bullock, who helped Dallas get to the Western Conference Finals. So I wouldn't be surprised if they try to shake it up with Evan Fournier this summer. I think he's got a big contract. It's sort of long-term. It might not be easy, but he is a hell of a 3-point shooter. Guys, on Evan?
I'll jump in here. It's funny you mentioned that, because I'm listening to our conversation about the draft, and the roster really reflects that we have a bunch of holes in it. I'm trying to think of who's definitely going to be starting for the team in 2022, 2023. And aside from RJ, I can't think of anyone who I know definitely, including Julius, will be starting for the team in 2022, 2023. And so I think that's part of the issue. And when we talk about the draft, if we have a lot of question marks in terms of who's going to be part of the starting roster, then it leads to this question of, okay, like what pieces do we need to plug in? And even to CT's point from before about, getting a lockdown wing, if RJ is going to be playing the 2 or the 3 and Evan Fournier is you're starting whatever, that means that you're going to have a defensive liability right there. And without a strong point guard, it creates another hole in our starting roster. So, and here's the other issue. We're not sure if RJ is going to be able to score consistently and efficiently. And that's the conundrum, is that we need RJ to really develop into a consistent scorer so that whatever we pair next to him, whomever we pair next to him, is it going to be a defensive specialist? Is it going to be a 3-and-D player, so that we can identify what it's going to be? And the same goes for Julius. We have to make a decision with regards to Julius. Is he going to be on the roster in 2022, 2023? So we can figure out, should this be a rebounding, power forward machine, or do we need a stretch 4? These are kind of the issues that our roster faces right now. And, it goes back to
issues, Jay.
Yeah.
It's getting more depressed every second you continue this. And Charles Barkley pointed it out on a conference call a couple of days ago. There are holes, and unless Derrick Rose turns back into what he was 2 years ago, it's tough. And you're right about the draft with Johnny Davis, even very good two-way defender. Maybe he works best with RJ Barrett at the 2. You trade Fournier, and you got Davis and RJ. But yeah, I think they are going to definitely lean toward a defensive-oriented wing player.
Yeah, even for Obi, I've been saying a Sochan, and going back to what I said, Eason fit between RJ and Obi, and they can cover up for their defensive shortcomings as well. Obi Toppin, if Randle is traded and he's the future at the power forward spot, Jeremy Sochan can be interchangeable with them. But there's buzz now that Sochan could be going 7. Portland's working him out. They
could be trading back. Anyone that Portland works out, they worked out Jalen Duren. I think he's too high to be the 7th pick as an 18-year-old. But everyone they work out, I feel they're trading back to evaluate, is this guy worth it at 11 or whatever. But Eason is a player I haven't really ridden too much. I keep hearing about his defensive savvy, and maybe he'll be one of the guys we get in the next couple of weeks at the workouts.
Yeah, he has a huge hand, like the claw. The New York Knicks have been trying to get a defensive specialist like that. Incredible in transition. But Mark, you mentioned Ty as well. While we're just on the point guard situation, I wanted to say, with Tyrese Maxey getting an opportunity, that's what a lot of fans want to see Emmanuel Quickley get that same opportunity. But with Ty, I feel like he's a trade back target. I wouldn't be mad if the Knicks took Ty, but it would have to be a trade back. Pick up multiple assets. And is that something that Brock Aller is going to be pushing for as well?
Always. Brock Aller's claim to fame is, let's trade back and collect more assets for somewhere down the road. He is the asset management guru. I don't think Tom Thibodeau is thrilled by that philosophy. He just wants the best player who's there. Listen, they had 1921 last year, first round. They gave away 19. They still traded back 21 and still got Quentin Grimes, whom Thibodeau wanted at 21 anyway. But that 19th pick could have been, maybe the kid that the Nets took at 27. So, again, Brock he's there for that. He's there to be the brains behind what is the most value you can get out of these picks. And who knows, 42, the Knicks could package with their 11th and move up even 2 spots. I don't know if the Knicks don't have a lot of, the interesting part of everything, the Knicks don't have a lot of holes on their roster in terms of vacancies. Like, most of these guys are under contract. Kemba they'll get rid of somehow. And Mitchell, may sign elsewhere, but there's a lot of guys who are coming back. So there's to get a 2nd round pick, is he going to be in the top 17?
And I think one of the things, and I was just thinking about the draft, do we even know who the definitive first player picked? Do we even have an idea of who's going to be the first player picked? This draft especially seems to be really topsy-turvy. there seems to be a lot of like, I don't even know who would be the first player picked. Is there any buzz in terms
I
of
mean, the Knicks would take Jabari Smith. What Orlando does with their positions, I'm not sure, but I honestly think that Jabari Smith is the best player available, no matter position. I do hear great things that the big center from Gonzaga, Chad, is not Porzingis. Like, he's stronger. He's got a better, higher basketball IQ. You look at Holmgren and he looks, like very frail. And, I saw him in person in Chicago. I was like, wow, he's really skinny like Porzingis. But I'm told that he's stronger than Porzingis, and he's not going to turn into an injury-prone type player like KP. Yeah, but I think Smith is number one. I that's my personal opinion. I know the Duke guy. I saw the Final Four. I mean, you guys saw the Final Four. Did Banchero, did he, wow, this guy's the number one pick in the draft? I mean, he didn't strike me as, yeah, he's young, very young, but he didn't wow me.
It's definitely not definitive, like EJ said. Whilst it's a deep draft with talent, I think there'll be NBA players in the second round, maybe even undrafted, which I look forward to talking to you gentlemen about. After the draft, surely the Knicks will be looking at some undrafted guys, the Boeheim prospects, which we'll talk about. But I feel like just trades. I can expect trades, because teams don't really, they want a safer bet rather than go out on a limb. And we mentioned trades. There are two partners that I think the Knicks could capitalize on. Charlotte have the 13th and the 15th picks, and San Antonio have picked 20 and 25. So just on the Brock Aller note, I could definitely see them talking to the San Antonio Spurs or Charlotte. That I would love that scenario personally. Get two picks in that range, and you get two stabs at it.
Yeah, that's Brock Aller talking, though. I don't think Tom wants 2 first-round picks. Listen, I think Indiana is a trade partner. They've talked about Miles Turner with the Pacers. They're at 6, and Brogdon is available, and he's got a big contract. And Brogdon is one of those, is the Knicks ready for a 30-year-old point guard? Are they ready to win? It's tough. Do you guys have any opinion? He's a good player. He's been injury prone. So the Knicks are mixed on Brogdon, but he's pretty good and a big upgrade on obviously what they have.
I'll let EJ.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing to you, CT. It feels like it feels a very Knicksian move. It's a player who's, didn't we just do this a couple seasons last season? A player who was injured, who's has a lot of, we think can tap into that well again and be really healthy, but the medical reports have said for a long time tends to get pretty injured. I don't know. I don't know if it's the right move. I don't know if the right move is if the team is trending younger for RJ, if it's going to be RJ's team, if we kind of think that Julius won't be here either next season or the season afterwards. I don't know if it's the right move. It's a move that seems to be to appease the coach, but is it the best move for the organization? I'm not sure. And I just want to throw this team out here too to match what CT saying. What is OKC doing? Are there any ways of tapping into the 5 million draft picks that OKC has? There has to be some plan there.
It is ridiculous how many draft picks they have, and they have some talent. But I just feel like the Knicks need players right now. They have so many holes. I know Aller wants to add more, and EJ, I know you're a big future guy and a long, slow rebuild. But OKC is always a trade partner everywhere. They got so many picks to trade. They can use them all for sure. It's an option, and one that Tom Thibodeau probably would not want to do, but he's not calling the shots.
Would Tom be for a player like, let's say, Russell Westbrook? His name's going to be out there and available, and Lakers have retooled.
Yeah, I think it's a good thought. His contract expires. The Knicks, actually, if if they don't add like a Brogdon type, they'll have cap space in 2023. They have a lot of contracts that are expiring. So a rental for Westbrook, is he a leader? Is he going to be good for Quickley and other guys? I mean, he's a little, he's got some baggage when it comes to being a locker room presence, but hell of a player still. I felt bad for him. We were in Los Angeles. I may have mentioned it on the show. And to hear him booed after missing shots in his hometown, it really hurt me. I'll have to say. Like Russell, I'm not a big fan of Russell as a person. I had a little incident with him once in the locker room, but I just felt bad. And he was under so much pressure being in his hometown. And he wanted to be there, and he just lost his confidence with a shot. But yeah, coming to New York, I mean, I think he would really embrace that stage. And he's still very athletic despite his age.
Yeah. I'd love to get your thoughts and EJ's thoughts on the coaching buzz as well. We've got to hit on that. Rick Brunson was hired by the organization, a familiar face. Again, the Knicks seem to go to the well to get another familiar face. We're losing assistants. So what did you gentlemen make of the welcoming in with Rick Brunson?
You could go first, EJ.
It's one of those stories that when I read it, it got me excited, and then I was like, "Wait, wrong Brunson." It's I don't know what to make of it. I think we've had the conversation before about what are the roles of coaches in the organization. What does Coach Thibodeau allow for his assistants to do? So I'm not really sure. I hope that in some ways that maybe Coach Brunson can help inspire some offensive creativity, because that was an area in which we were really lacking. But I think we've actually spoken a lot about Coach Thibodeau today. I don't know what to make of it. I hope that it helps our players in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, right. In regards to the hook with Jalen, I think we're looking too deep into that. They've been trying, or at least Thibodeau has been trying to hire Rick for a couple of years. He had some, incidents in his past that led to his dismissal at Minnesota. Some people at the Garden were a little concerned about that. Listen, I don't know if you guys read that Sports Illustrated story a few years back with Rick and Jalen, but Rick was really, really hard on Jalen growing up. I mean, Rick was really crafting a professional basketball player. Does Jalen want to be on the same team as his father and travel around I don't know. I hope, my fingers are crossed, that Jalen said, that'll be cool. But the Dallas Mavericks had a wonderful run to the conference finals. And I know Rick just wants him to get paid his market value. He just wants him to get paid after 4 years of being under a minimum contract. Rick was very bitter about that. I talked to Rick before that draft, and Rick said, we were in Minnesota, I remember, at a practice, and I said to him, so where do you think Jalen will go? And he goes, it looks like the second round. And I'm like, really? It's like the guy was like college player of the year at Villanova and two-time champion. So, so Rick was pretty bitter that Jalen went to the second round. He wants him to get paid. What Leon Rose has done is boost Jalen Brunson's market value to where Mark Cuban is going to have to pay him $20 million a year, and that's going to benefit Leon Rose's son, Sam Rose, who is now his secondary agent at CAA. So it's a win-win, I guess, for the Brunson family.
Yep, absolutely.
And the Rose family, sort of.
Seems like a win-win for Thibodeau. And another ripple effect this can cause is Johnny Bryant is in the news, looking like a head candidate for a Utah gig. And that would mean the last non-Tom Thibodeau coaching staff on this team. Correct me if I'm wrong. What does that mean? Do you see Johnny Bryant being successful in Utah, and that's going to cause some ruckus with Donovan? They're obviously going to try to please him.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately for Knicks fans, if Johnny Bryant becomes the head coach of the Utah Jazz, that will be the end of the Donovan Mitchell soap opera of wanting a trade. We've written it so many times. They're very close. If they hire Johnny, someone with no experience, it means that Donovan is helping call the shots. Listen, Tom Thibodeau, he didn't know Johnny. Johnny's he's not an X's and O's guy. He's a relationship guy. He actually was pretty close with Kemba Walker and got Kemba Walker through some tough times during this past season. It will give Tom another chance, another opening to hire one of his own guys from the past. So, Tom, listen, he enjoyed Mike Woodson. He respects Mike Woodson, did not mind Mike Woodson on his staff. It wasn't his first choice. Kenny Payne, he didn't know, and he definitely did not know Johnny Bryant. So Tom will be happy for Johnny Bryant if he gets that job.
Any updates on Mitchell Robinson, or are we still status quo?
Well, people were texting me this new weird Instagram that Mitchell Robinson posted. I don't know if you guys saw it. It's he had a video of defense on a string, and all these players are on a ropes doing this weird drill, and it was like really bizarre. And he wrote on the Instagram, "Show this to Tibbs," and like some of the fans thought he was mocking Tibbs. The Knicks saying it's just Mitchell saying Tibbs loves drills. But listen, there's been so many cryptic Instagrams from Mitchell Robinson. I think if the money is right, he will stay with the Knicks. I don't think he hates it that much. He does feel that he should have an expanded offensive role. There's not a lot of teams with cap space. All eyes are on Detroit and even Charlotte. If Detroit even drafts Duran, listen, once Detroit fell to 5 and were out of the range for Holmgren, that boosted Mitchell's chances of winding up in Detroit. Detroit wants a center, and they will go after Mitchell Robinson if they don't draft a center that they like. So it's all about the market. Is there a team under the cap space willing to give him $15 million a year? I don't know. I know the Knicks are concerned, and I probably mentioned this, and I know I've written it. Giving Mitchell a long-term contract, he's got maturity issues. He's never made big money in the NBA, and giving him a boatload of money, is that going to diminish his motivation? He's been playing for a new contract since he got in the league. Again, he signed for 4 years at the minimum. So that's a concern by the Knicks. And also the center position is devalued right now. And Mitchell still cannot shoot and is regressing from the free throw line.
Yep. Yeah, they cannot lose.
Do you guys have any strong hope that he resigns, or do you feel that in this day and age? And the other thing on the switching, like Thibodeau doesn't like to switch that much with Mitchell because he wants Mitchell under the rim. He wants Mitchell protecting the rim.
Yeah, look, for me, in terms of Mitch, it's an overall thought about not wanting to lose him. An asset we drafted, we groomed. He did grow, in the years that he was with us, but I wouldn't want to lose him for nothing. It would have to be sign him and trade him later just to keep him as an asset, or sign and trade. EJ, what are your thoughts?
Same. I don't like losing. I don't like drafting players and losing them for nothing. It doesn't make any sense. It's bad business, particularly because we not only would lose an asset, but we've had a number of different draft picks who were basically waste picks, whether it's Frank Ntilikina or Kevin Knox. It would just compound what we've already lost with previous draft picks that never really mounted to anything else. Cleanthony early,
And it would raise the question, why did they freeze at the trade deadline? I'm told they were in talks with Detroit, and in the final 48 hours, the Knicks went dark. No longer were interested in a trade. I don't know why. Leon's only interview, he mentioned, listen, we're still talking, and we'll talk up until the day before July 1st, right up until the final day before free agency.
And I think it helps with getting Nerlens Noel's money off the books. I know that's going to expire, but if they could get a trade to get his money off, that just makes that a more easier decision. But a couple of other things to touch on just before we let you get out of here,
If I
Mark.
can make one note about Noel, I will say that someone within the Knicks mentioned today, I expect Noel to have a really big bounce back season because he's in a contract year. And that's the history of Nerlens Noel.
Yeah, Cam Reddish. I said the same thing about Cam Reddish. You know, he's playing for the biggest payday of his NBA career as well, and he's been moved, traded. His future is uncertain, but we could talk about that all day. I wanted to ask you, Mark. We're getting closer to free agency, obviously, and then summer league. I want to get both of your thoughts. Who do you feel like is going to be on the summer league squad this year, out of the current players at least?
Yeah, well, I mean, Miles is going to be there with Quentin, Jericho again. So the three guys from last year. Emmanuel's done. Obi's done. You know, when you go into your third year and you've produced like they have, there's no point. If they make 2 draft picks, obviously the 11th pick and the 42nd pick will be there. And that probably, of the guys on the roster, that would probably be it.
Is that Farron Hunt?
Guys, this is it's not a strong draft up top, and you can make the argument even the lottery, it's not superb, but there's a lot of guys, and there's going to be guys not drafted like Buddy Boeheim, who people think is going to be at least an NBA player for a few years, as long as he's hitting 38% of his 3-point shots. Supposedly he's a good ball handler. I didn't watch a lot of Syracuse, but he's a player. And his father I spoke to last week, and he feels his son could be in the NBA. I mean, you know, off the bench in a spot role. And it would be wonderful. I mean, Jim Boeheim watches Knicks games up in Syracuse on MSG Network all the time. He's done it for years. It would be a real thrill for Boeheim to see his son on the Knicks.
Yeah, might also be a good fit.
Sleeper targets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys watch that much college basketball, but, you know, Buddy, you know, had a pretty good year. His brother also worked out. He's more of not much of a shooter, but he's a big, burly guy, a G League player, you know, this year, and maybe go overseas at some point.
Yeah, and EJ and Mark, you wrote that newsletter this week. Everyone check that out. A topic that I've talked about for the last 6 months or so is Carmelo Anthony, and you know what his legacy was.
Someone on a podcast actually asked me about it a few days ago, and it got my wheels turning.
Yeah. Look, Carmelo Anthony, you know, he handles the market the right way, and if he came to the New York Knicks, it would be a different role. To me, I would see a different role, you know, a mentor, a guy off the bench, someone who's reliable, could hold the locker room together, and he's invested in New York. He has roots. You know, I think, you know, it would be a completely different scenario. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head. I mean, I wrote it in my newsletter that we're talking about mentor Melo, and I know he's made a lot of mistakes across the years, but he's 38 years old, and he knows the mistakes he made. And I think he could be a great influence on Julius Randle. Someone in the organization kind of mentioned, you know, if Carmelo was in the locker room last year, maybe he could have been helpful with Julius and got his head on straight. RJ Barrett, what it's like to be a star in New York, just all the young players, Miles and Obi Toppin, Quickley. I mean, the one thing about Carmelo, he's a polarizing figure, but players love him. They idolize him. He's like a god. And I was very critical when he was in New York, because I thought he did not live up to being a clutch, final minute sniper. He missed too many big shots. But at this stage, like, next season is kind of going to be battling for the 9th seed. How wonderful it would be to go to arena to arena. And maybe not every team would give Carmelo his little, you know, ceremony, but it would be a kind of a real cool thing for the Knicks to be part of that farewell tour and the young players to see that. EJ, I'm sure that you do not want to see Carmelo in a Knicks uniform.
Actually, you'd be surprised. I was thinking about this past season, and I was just asking myself, who was the locker room leader? And you know, that might be part of the issue, is that there wasn't that vet who's been in the league 10 plus years, 15 years, who could pull a kid by the side and say, like, you know, hey, this is the way you actually approach this question. This is how you speak to the media. This is how you curry favor with the fans. You know, it got my wheels turning and thinking, if a Carmelo is a Knick last year, does Julius speak to the fans the way that he does? Does he speak in that press conference and basically like turn the entire fan base, almost most of the fan base, against him? So I don't know if it's Melo, but I do think that it's important to have a veteran presence. The best teams have veterans who are solid locker room leaders. You know, I'm thinking of Miami, and Udonis has one, for example. Like, there's just something really important about having someone who's all about culture and who sets it, you know, even when it's not necessarily your best player. So
you're saying Taj ain't that guy?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Exactly what someone mentioned to me today. He said, what do we need, Carmelo? Taj Gibson is there. And I was like, well, Taj didn't exactly do a great job this season. And he doesn't play enough, and he's not good enough, and he doesn't have the gravitas. He's a great guy, and he's been a leader in his day, but he's not Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo has a special cachet to young players in this league.
And I go back to that 54-win team. It was a Rasheed Wallace, Camby, Kenyon Martin, Jason Kidd, those kind of guys that were those guys in that locker room that probably held things together.
Yeah, well, especially, so those other guys all got various injuries across the way, but Jason Kidd, I'm told, was the real leader of that team and did an incredibly great job getting that team to 54 wins. He was the locker room leader, unquestioned. And he had help because Kurt was there and Marcus. And, you know, Rasheed got hurt really early. I'm not a big fan of Rasheed, but whatever. I mean, listen, you need that voice in the locker room. As EJ said, Knicks did not have it this past season.
Yep. And I'll put both of you on the clock. The New York Knicks are on the clock on draft night. Gun to your head. What do you think happens?
Go ahead, EJ.
They trade up. And they go for the. I'm going to put it on the table. Jaden Ivey. Hoping they find a way.
Pie in the sky. You probably got to give up Quickley, another first round pick. I mean, it's going to take a few pieces. I at 11, I think the most likely player, unfortunately, because I'd rather them get Dyson Daniels, but I don't think he's going to be there. And I think the most likely player to be there at 11 is Johnny Davis of Wisconsin. And we talked about needing another defensive presence. His three-point shooting was not great this year. He told me in Chicago, not indicative of me. I was getting double teamed at the three-point line. No, Wisconsin did not have enough weapons. I think he could fit in, you know, Fournier to me. I think the Knicks are going to try to deal him. And I think Johnny Davis could be that, not Reggie Bullock right away, obviously, but in that nature where it maybe after his rookie year, maybe he could start defending the best player on the other team.
Yep, it's going to be fascinating, gentlemen. Look forward to it. A lot of fans are looking forward to it just because of the unpredictability. I mean,
CT,
anything can happen.
Yeah, CT, what's your pick?
That's what you two are here for. Yeah. I'm going to say the New York Knicks do trade up. Yep, I think it's that time. I think it's that year. There's assets that they just want to consolidate. Like you said, with Tom Thibodeau, Mark, you always say it's just not a rebuilding situation here. And I think they're going to put some chips in the middle of the table. But I wouldn't be surprised if they stayed at 11.
Right. Well, one thought is getting up to 7 and then do Daniels. Portland has made it very clear that they're willing to go back to 11. So the Knicks have a couple of assets that I'm sure the Blazers wouldn't mind. I know people are talking Randle in a deal, but that would be a very complicated, mega crazy deal. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but that a Knicks Portland scenario is definitely a possibility.
Yep, fascinating. And some trades as well. But it's been a pleasure chopping this up, and I look forward to having you back to talk about it post-draft as well. Always a great conversation. Appreciate your time, Mark. And it's been great having you, EJ, to hear your thoughts on this situation. It's a pivotal draft for the New York Knicks.
Thanks, CT, EJ. I really enjoyed it. You guys always do a great job. It's the best podcast out there.
You heard it from the man.
Don't at me on that. The other podcast.
Good to talk to you, CT. It's always a pleasure.
Catch you soon. Peace.